Blessings, family, to all my brothers and sisters and all those in between. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Saraswati Aswaha. Shri Ganesha Jaya Ki. Hanuman Jaya Ki. Thoth Hermes Trismegistus Mercurius Merlin Tehuti Katakoto Jaya Ki. Christ Jesus Yeshua Yahushua Hamashiach Jaya Ki. Horus Jaya Ki. Ra Jaya Ki. I'm out here in Connecticut with my family, and 2 days ago I pulled one of those, like, my flights at, I gotta be at the airport at 6 a.m. I'll start packing at 2 a.m. one of those nights. And so I didn't sleep, and so I just took a nap, and I came out of the nap kind of with like a profound bad taste in my mouth. And it feels like it's a message that I was shown, that I've been asking about. I've been asking to be shown. I've been praying to be shown. And Jesus is really in the air right now because of what Brother Ye is doing. And I just posted this thing yesterday. My mom is telling people to go listen to Kanye's album, which I never thought that would happen. So the dream that I had, so I'm going to do a couple of things in this video. I'm going to explain the dream that I had. I'm going to explain a concept that I've been shown a while back, earlier this year, really. And it has to do with the quantum mechanics of how consciousness moves into a human being and how they express it. And basically what we do with the consciousness we're given. Called vertical and horizontalism, I guess. And then how that applies to the dream that I was shown. So dream, tactic of observation, and application. So this dream was really, really weird. And it felt like it was directed by Tim Burton. And it felt like it was actually the Batman movie with Danny DeVito as the Penguin. And that's the Michael Keaton one, right? Or is that the Val Kilmer one? I don't remember. But Danny DeVito's in this one I'm talking about. And it started, there was like a loft in a city, and I was being intimate with a woman that I didn't know. And I had the thought several times that I had mistaken her for someone else. And yet the momentum was going towards sex. And there was kind of this like ignoring of the lack of connection. This ignoring of the lack that we didn't even really, I didn't know who she was. And then all of a sudden it was a party at that loft, it looked like it was kind of the Friends loft, like the loft that they used in Friends, but as if Tim Burton decorated it for like a Halloween party. And today is October 28th, 2019, so. And there was a party, and there were all these people, and I remember feeling like it felt frozen. Like it felt like no one was doing anything new, and everyone was recycling energy, recycling information, telling stories. The alcohol had literally calcified their bodies so that when light moved into their awareness, it was just like a ping pong. It was just like this recycling. And it felt dead, basically. It felt dead, and it felt kind of zombie-ish. It felt like an Andy Warhol party, but directed by Tim Burton. And And then the next step of the dream was I was on a plane, and Tyler the Creator was sitting right next to me. And I was like giddy because Tyler means a lot to me and everything that he's expressed, and everything that he's allowed through him. His artistic expression, specifically. And I remember it was a weird airplane because the seat in front of him leaned forward, kind of like a car. And then I looked at him and I was giddy, and I was like, oh, wow, I get to sit next to you. And he looked at me like, don't be weird. And then we were at a studio, and Pharrell was there, which I got even more giddy. And then the music was done, and it was like 4 a.m., middle of the night, and they went to go ride bicycles, and I didn't have one. And I was walking with this group, and I was talking to one of his friends that has been there for the whole journey that he's been on. And I remember he felt like a zombie. He felt like he wasn't really there. It was like he was just holding a space. And then there were these other dudes, and I basically felt like I got stuck with the losers because I didn't have a bike, and him and Pharrell and a couple others rode bikes off, and it felt like it was in like Milan or Prague or Paris, some like really cool fancy place. And they like went off into the night riding bicycles. And then I walked back because I didn't have my phone. I was gonna get a Lime scooter, but I didn't have my phone. And then there's another section of the dream that I'll spare the details of because I'm still processing the kind of intimate reflections of it. But it had to do with my family, and had to do with certain family members, and had to do with kind of that same theme, though, of stagnant movement, stagnant energy, because of valuing social experience and valuing someone else's barometer of you. It was all these people like looking and seeing how they looked to other people. Like you ever like checked and made sure you didn't spill something on your shirt, and you're literally like checking to see if any, or maybe like, you gotta pick your nose, and you pick your nose, and you literally have a moment where you're hyper externally focused. I don't know why it became a Dr. Evil nose pick, but apropos, I suppose. So that's the nutshell of the dream sequence. And yeah, it's like the middle of the day, but I didn't have sleep the other night, so I just took a nap and woke up, and it felt like Christ wanted me to share this message, because it's something that's been on my heart since it's been a theme this year. So we'll move into the second part of this video, which is the concepts: horizontal versus vertical, electromagnetic, embodiment, and distribution of consciousness. What does that mean? We're moving into it. So I was even contemplating bringing like a paper so I could like show, but the brief idea is that when we're in connection to our soul, well, rather, when we're identified as soul, and yeah, when we are in connection to our soul, and then we take that connection and maybe we talk to God, whatever that means to you, or you talk to the universe, or you have this cosmic moment, or it's basically like a looking upward. Now, I don't mean God is upward. God's inward, if anything. But it's this metaphor right now for this articulation of this idea, to be clear. So the idea is vertical versus horizontal distribution of consciousness. And when we're vertical, we're literally in prayer. When you pray, or anyone prays, or even meditates is kind of different. But when you pray, you're literally like boom, 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 right? And even if it's not an actual sky daddy in the clouds, it's the idea that there's something higher than you, something greater than you. Maybe not higher vertically, although vertically does seem to be an interesting metaphor, but there's something greater, more, uh, more full, more whole, more complete. There's a lot of different ways you could articulate it, but pointing to God, pointing to the divine, pointing to that which is divine, pointing to that which is singular, which is totally all encompassing, the one infinite absolute source of all things, the creator. In yogic and in yogic culture, it's referred to as Brahma or Brahman, and it's the single pointed reference point from which everything else comes from, which we in the West have predominantly referred to as God, which seems rather limited of a vocabulary term when you dive into the yogic esoteric sciences and stuff. So that's vertical. That's a vertical energy. This is also what happens when someone channels, when someone starts speaking the gospel, or like Abraham Hicks or Bashar, or how A Course in Miracles was written, or how the raw material, the Law of One, was written, or even how Paul Selig allows the light to move through him. I'm working with one of his texts right now called Realization, I think it's called. And so to go vertical is to take the body and the mind, which the mind is a component of the body. If you want to get into the dynamic, meticulous kind of articulation of what's really going on here, that we are, what is going on here that we are. To point the body-mind upward and allow, or even kind of just unfocus the body-mind and allow that which is highest to move through, is to go vertical with the body-mind complex. To be horizontally focused, I quite literally see there's these horses over there that I'm looking at. I think of other people that I might interact with today. All other human beings that are manifest in reality, they are quite literally horizontally away from us. They're not in the unmanifest. They are in the manifest, as we are. And so social interaction is horizontal energy distribution, both importing and exporting. I would like to make something clear, that I'm not giving an opinion of how I think things are. I have been shown through a really intense process of initiation into seeing the truth of the light, which is Christ, but that word turns some people off, and you can understand it as esoteric mysticism, the occult, or quantum physics, to be very, very simple and left brain about it. It is quite literally how the quantum field of connectivity interacts with itself and how we interact with it. And so to go vertical is to connect with God. To go horizontal is to connect with other people. When you are overly horizontal, you're just giving your opinion about a tree. Oh wow, look at that tree. It's so orange. It's so brown. It's so green. It looks very da-da-da. I'm not really adding anything new if I'm doing that. I'm literally just looking at what already exists, and I'm just using my isness, my ability to focus and articulate, to just describe something that's already there. I'm not adding anything new to it. Although you could say that I'm adding my perspective to it, but the tree doesn't need my perspective. The universe doesn't necessarily need my perspective. I'm not adding anything new. Someone else could come and do the same. In parties, in social interactions, this is the same thing. There is, how are you? How am I? How are they? Gossip is pretty much the epitome of this concept, which is literally just one social reference point to another social reference point, socializing or verbally addressing other social reference points. So it's using the body mind complex to just narrate the movie horizontally in the 3D manifest world. So this is not a spiritual narration, right? We're not talking about the celestial uh, orchestra that's taking place. Like, wow, did you see what took place when Pluto shifted into that conjunct with Chiron and aligned with Sagittarius's trine with Mars in Scorpio? Whoa, that was a doozy. It affected my metaphysical state, etc. We're not talking about things that are happening in the celestial. We're talking about things that are happening in the social, in the three-dimensional manifest, referring to the horizontal component of this. Um, and so we talked about the dream, that's the concept, and now integrate. So I woke up from that dream and I wrote it down, as is my practice, as has been since I was introduced to Carl Jung's work of dream analysis, and also I just would have really epic dreams like, wait, what happened? And wanted to develop a relationship with becoming more clear about what happened, because it gets really foggy if you let minutes go by with just like not writing the dream down. Even if you're looking at it in your mind when you wake up from the dream, you're like in bed and you're like, whoa, that was, wait, what? In that energy to literally just be like, wait, what? And typing it or writing it or whatever. Um, it's a process of like anchoring it and grounding it into remembrance, into consciousness, into awareness. And so what does it mean to be conscious or awareness of this thing that I'm pointing at, and why? Why am I giving this to you? Well, Christ put this on my heart, and Christ says, yo, give this. You know you're supposed to do this. And this is me stepping into more of what I understand to be my highest embodiment. So that's that. More on that later. But yeah, so the integration of this concept in this dream is that when we are disconnected with the creator, with the creative essence that creates all things, and our soul is what we connect to that through. I say our soul because we all individually have, in yoga they call it the jiva atma, and it is the light that is you, that if you want to like look and find like, well, where is it in the body? It's said to be in the solar plexus, but it's the soul. This to me is not the exact same thing, but it is the same in its essence and slightly different articulation of what is Christ. It is the crystalline component of that which the light of consciousness moves through before it manifests into and as the body which has a mind. This might seem like, whoa, it's complicated, but it's really just looking at the anatomy of what is. No different than if I were to break down to you one of these trees. I'd be like, well, you got the bark, you got the tree, and then if you open it inside the tree, you get the rings, and that's because of the growth, and you got the branches, and you got the leaves. What is it? We're talking about components of a relatively complex system. Relatively, because it's all relative. But a relative complex system that seems to be functioning as one unit, right? I'm a human being, and yet, whoa, what are my emotions? What are my thoughts? What is my body in relationship to my thoughts and emotions? And then what is my soul? Where is my soul? This is something that really got me hung up, and that I never found in Christianity, which caused me to go seeking elsewhere, and ended up finding yoga, and Jesus spoke to me more clearly in yoga than he ever did when I was identified as a Christian. And now they all seem to merge in one big old stew concoction of light. If it's light, it's light. If it's not, it's not. But if it's light, you know. So why is he asking me to share this? I mean, let me check real quick. Brother Yeshua, Father God, why am I being asked to share this with whoever's watching? The response that is heard is because this is what creates the herd. This is what creates sheep. What Rocco is pointing at is the thing that creates sheep. It is what creates the herd. And it is also how wolves are able to feed on the herd, because when there is a herd, there is group mind, hive mind, and not as a spiritual hive mind. The spiritual hive mind is referred to as the paramatma, or the soul of the group soul. But this is referring to the group body. The group body is not as intelligent as the group soul. The group soul knows what Gaia as a life form needs in order to expand and grow harmoniously. The group body is a feeding parasite of sorts that needs energy and does not create new, ultimately. They are grazing in a stuck perpetual loop of grazing and licking themselves and behaving as if they are limited to their mammalian components. To limit one's identification with a mammal is to do that, is to be the mammal. And the mammal needs social bonding. It needs social experience. To be a spiritual person or a spiritual seeker immediately engenders this idea of solitude. And there is something about going into alone time in search of God, in search of the divine, however one wants to refer to that which is whole or holy or divine or non-separate or non-segmented or unified, singular, from which all things come. What Rocco is pointing at is the virus of society. That does not mean society is a virus by itself. There's a component of society that is a beautiful expansion and growth of life. And humans are part of that life. Now, humans are also part of the very thing that are killing the opportunity for harmonious expansion. So what is being pointed at is this concept that has been shown from the higher octaves, easily perceived from the upper room, easily perceived when one is as of the Christ itself, confusingly misunderstood when one is limiting their identification with the small self of the body-mind, egoic, time-based identity structure. To share a time-based identity with other time-based identities is to be in social loop, not creating anything new, not allowing the divine to flow through and plant seeds of light and inspiration into the field of the quantum existence that we understand as Earth, that we mentally interact with as society when there are other people present. When we are alone and that energy comes through, the divine, the inspiration is of light. The etymology of inspiration points at this. In spirit, espirite, the Latin or whatever the exact background of the word inspiration is. It points at to be filled with spirit, to be in a kind of electromagnetic charge, and therefore propelled forth to conduct oneself in a certain way. So what's being pointed at here is this stuckness that happens when we are not as the soul, when we're only functioning as a body-mind complex. And when we're trying to create our own kingdom without the light, it's like it's a synthetic kingdom that is shallow. And I think of a scene from the most recent Toy Story where it's like this really weird doll is it's like recruiting these other really weird looking they look like Pee Wee Herman dolls, but I think there's another term, but they're just creepy looking little dolls. And she's making her own little kingdom, and she's attempting to secure for herself something that she believes will heal her of her trauma and her pain. And this creates this really weird, creepy Tim Burton kind of like dystopian gloom. So I suppose we'll leave it on this note. How are you allowing light to move through you and into your life? How are you allowing guidance from a component of yourself that is higher than just your body and your mind to influence how you move in the world? Are you stuck? Are you feeling stuck? Do you ever feel like there's not enough progression in your life? Do you ever feel like there's something missing? Do you feel like you want something more to flow into your life to create more abundance, etc.? Do you feel ever in a conversation that conversation's not serving your highest abundance? You ever feel in a relationship that relationship is keeping you stuck? You ever feel like you're valuing other people's opinions of who you are and what you're doing in a way that is super limiting? And you know that because, or maybe you don't know it, but you feel it and you sense it, but you don't want to be mean, and so you're kind of stuck in a perpetual loop of like wanting to tend to others' notions of yourself, and then also feeling like that's a dead end. What is being shown now is that, yeah, it is a dead end. It's an end. It is death. It is the death of light, because it's not the birthing of light. It is the siphoning of light for a social identity complex. As I was walking out here, my nephews leave things on the floor, and I couldn't help but see the shamanic lensing of it. There were two things that were on the ground. One was this Mewtwo card, which, if you don't know Pokemon, it's kind of too long to dive into, but if you know, you know. This is basically in the Pokemon world, this is a recreation of the Pokemon which is most rare. This Mewtwo is the man-made version of the most rare. And that sticker was sitting right next to this. I don't know if it'll be backwards on the screen, but it says Lost Ocean. And it feels like that is where I've found myself to be, and I've heard others express themselves to be, in this lost ocean of valuing others' perception of them over their own soul's unique divine expression that's demanding to be addressed and realized. So what you do with these words and these insights are of your is up to you. You can look inward or upward, but even right now you're looking into your screen at Rocco look upward. You're looking horizontally at one who looks upward. This is what it is to channel. This is what it is to allow the one and the insight of the one to move through and flood one's experience and flood one's life with that potent light. How you know it's the light? Light has very specific qualities. It illuminates. It has heat. Sometimes we feel heat as inspiration. Sometimes we feel heat as challenging. Sometimes sweat develops because those atoms are shaking and vibrating within us and calling us to action. Action as movement. Those atoms as movement. The light as movement. The light as a reflection of a flame. That flame that burns, that is being pointed at now, does not burn in the third dimension. It burns elsewhere and creates light in the third dimension. That light is awareness. That light is tangible clarity if it is savored and noticed thoroughly enough. May your embodiment be smooth and graceful. May all that you are looking for find you in a way that you find exactly as you need it. May the one infinite love and light flood your experience with bliss, serenity, and clarity. And I trust that these words that have come through this one are useful, helpful, and provide assistance in further aligning with that which you truly are. Blessings. Namaste.